Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Brad Peniston, Executive Editor at Defense One. Welcome to State of the Army, part of our State of Defense video series. Today, we're continuing our three-part examination of how the U.S. military services are preparing for the challenges ahead. We're exploring the strategic, operational, and technological forces shaping the future of national security. The Army is meeting the moment with intense experimentation. Under initiatives like Transformation in Contact, the service is putting emerging tech directly into the hands of soldiers, then using their experiences to develop the tech and tactics for the conflicts of today and tomorrow. And we'll begin with our keynote conversation with Major General John Cogbill, commander of the 11th Airborne Division. We'll talk about what he and the soldiers are learning about, reacting to, and experimenting with, and then about what they're doing to develop new ways to project power. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping notes for our virtual audience. First, we'd like to thank our sponsors for their support in making this program possible and for helping bring together leaders from government and industry for this important conversation. If you're watching alongside colleagues, feel free to share the live stream link with your team. And finally, today's program is being recorded and will be available on demand shortly, so you can revisit key insights or share it with others. And now, please join me in welcoming Major General Cogbill. Major General Cogbill, thank you so much for joining us. You're a paratrooper, a ranger, a former JSOC chief of staff, among other things, and now you command the U.S. Army's 11th Airborne Division, the Arctic Angels, out of Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska. Thanks so much for being a part of Defense One State of Defense.
Thanks for having me, Brad. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, I know that you're doing a lot of exercises, a lot of experimentation up there in Alaska. And what I'd really like to talk about today is how your division learns, how you bring in, how you absorb things, the lessons from your experiments, how you bring stuff in from outside the division, and then how you transmit that learning to the larger Army. There are a bunch of different dimension axes we can talk about, dimensions of this whole thing. But I think that's the kind of thing that our audience is really interested in, because so much is happening in the Army, at the military, at the Pentagon level, and so forth. So with that, I'll open it up to you, sir.
All right, thanks, Brad. That's a wide range of topics here, but I'll just say, the 11th Airborne Division learns like all good Army divisions do, and that's we go to the field and we put our soldiers in tough, realistic conditions. We define the training objectives based off our mission essential task, and then we turn them loose to go practice the art that is warfighting. And so most recently, we just finished the Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center rotation, which we do every year, which is a home station CTC run by the 196th Infantry, where we put the entire division in the field. We have one brigade combat team as the rotational training unit. The other brigade combat team provides the OP4, and then the division provides the exercise support group as well as HICON. So we're able to get multi-echelon training in an Arctic environment. And we do this for a lot of reasons. Primarily is, as the Army's only Arctic division, we have to be able to fight and win in the Arctic. And you can't replicate that at the National Training Center or the Joint Readiness Training Center. There's also a tremendous cost savings of doing it here in home station. And then finally, it saves us the time of transferring all those people and equipment to the lower 48, allows us to focus on what those warfighting tasks are. It also is a great opportunity for us to invite multinational partners who can come in. So our Scandinavian partners, Japan, partners from the Pacific, to whoever we want to bring in to test our ability to be interoperable in this environment. So we get out there and then, we build a really tough scenario, and we put our soldiers into the most challenging environmental conditions imaginable. If you've ever been out to the Yukon training area or the Donnelly training area up there in the interior of Alaska, temperatures are typically 20 to 40 to 50 below. And then, anywhere from high winds, waist deep snow, mountainous terrain, all the things that we actually experienced during this rotation. And then we let our soldiers get out there. And then when you talk about equipping and learning, there's different things we can learn. We can learn about new formations as our brigade combat teams transform from infantry brigade combat teams to mobile brigade combat teams, there's new organization. So our Airborne Brigade 211, who was the Op 4, they went ahead and transformed prior to the rotation. The RTU 111 fought their legacy formation, so they kept their Cav squadron intact, did not convert to the multifunctional reconnaissance company, and then we let those two go at it. Then we also put some new equipment, some new hardware into their hands to allow them to test new concepts for the Army. Because as you see, what our transformation and contact divisions are doing in terms of vastly increasing the number of small UAS systems and how that impacts techniques, tactics, and procedures, we let them do that as well. And then we have other things that are Arctic specific. So there's, how do you sustain the Arctic? How do you talk in the Arctic? How do you fight? How do you move over the snow mobility? So we had over 40 experiments that we conducted in conjunction with the Army Modernization Enterprise, so Defense Innovation Unit, DevCom ARL, and others that wanted to bring things to test where they can only get the type of feedback that you can get in terms of how well it'll perform in those harsh environmental conditions. It's a great opportunity to do so. And then we figure out how we share. But I'll pause there. If you want to put a finer point on that, we can go any direction you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely, General. You mentioned the Transformation and Contact Initiative, which of course is taking place across the Army. How do the things that those other divisions are learning arrive at the 11th Airborne? And how do you set up an experiment to test them or to inculcate whatever they've learned into your troops?
That's a great question, Brad. So we are learning a lot, from the TIC divisions. General George's philosophy is that continuous transformation isn't necessarily a unit; it's a mindset. And so, although we were not designated as a TIC division like the 101st or the 10th Mountain or the 25th or 4th ID, we're learning as much as we can by watching them, by reading either through formal or informal feedback loops where we can see how they're performing with the new equipment in the different environments. And then we are trying to fast follow so that by the time the Army can field, which the Army's accelerated fielding in a number of areas, as the Secretary and the Chief try to move at the speed of relevance, we're positioning ourselves to be ready and to be already capable of incorporating those new TTPs as well as the new equipment. So one example would be counter UAS. Small UAS. When I took command back in August, we had 3 functioning quadcopters in the division, in between the 2 BCTs. We reached out to 25th ID. We reached out to 101st, as well as Army Materiel Command. Said we need help. We're not a TIC division, but we need this capability. We've got to stay relevant. We're looking at lessons learned from Ukraine and other places around the world. So through memorandums of agreement, through bootstrapping with some of our own O&M dollars, through training provided by some of the other divisions, we were able to acquire and assemble or purchase enough quadcopters. So we went to the field with 172, in that short amount of time. And then we also had the trained operators. So we took the best practices from their first-person view drone operators course. We ran our own course. We started pushing folks through, prioritizing the RTU to make sure that they were proficient and could actually take these tools out. That's just one example. So just if we look at the AMC as AMC tries to reach industrial strength production capability, we were able to procure 50 of the first 10-inch FPV drones that came off their assembly line. And those actually turned out to be some of the best quadcopters that we had, with speeds up to 100 miles an hour, range 2.5 to 3 kilometers. We could put different payloads on them. We were able to provide that feedback back to AMC, which then makes us more likely to be in receipt of more of those in the future, because we're demonstrating that one, we're capable of using them. Two, that particular model can operate in the Arctic. So again, we're looking at the 101st and 25th. So the Eagle Works at the 101st or the Lightning Labs at the 25th have different style quadcopters, FPV drones. Both are doing phenomenal things, but one uses the CNC methodology. The other is 3D printing, and we're trying to figure out what works best in the Arctic, what works best in Indo-Pacific, which is where we have a lot of our O-plan requirements, and what's most sustainable in a kind of deployed expeditionary environment? What will which materials will we have the best access to? So we're learning with that. Um, Looking at next gen C2 and where the Army's going, we are using the Maven Smart system right now as our COP and our SIP, and using that for our digital targeting. So this is you mentioned earlier a previous conversation we had a couple years ago about how CENTCOM transformed from a legacy warfighting headquarters to a data centric warfighting headquarters, and how those techniques are being implemented currently on the battlefield in Operation Epic Fury. We're using those same techniques here in using the Maven Smart system as software of a service to be able to sit our soldiers down next to engineers that can come into our exercises that we're designing to help us shorten our kill chains, help develop agentic AI, and using AI and ML to speed up some of our staff processes and to make our kill chains faster and more lethal. So that's another area where we're able to kind of follow what the Army is doing. And then as we transform into a mobile brigade combat team, that means we're going to change the MTO of our BCTs. So we're watching very closely what the TIC divisions are doing with the ISV, and then providing feedback to the Army. How well do we think that's going to work in Alaska, where an ISV, as you're aware, is basically a Jeep with the top down, and you can put a squad of soldiers in the back. Not sure that would be super effective up in the interior of Alaska in the winter, but it would be pretty effective if we were to deploy west of the IDL into an archipelago environment, and we would need that mobility provided. So as we look at that, we look at our other capabilities like the cold weather all-terrain vehicle, our snow machines, our FMTVs, our JLTVs, plus ISV. We owe that feedback back to General George as to this is what we think an Arctic MTO should look like, and this is the optimal kind of allocation to be fielded here versus what should be fielded somewhere forward to be prepoed in case of some sort of O-plan requirement. But those are just a few of the areas that we're staying abreast. And then I mentioned formal and informal networks. The formal networks like the Army Innovation Forum that T2Com has stood up is a monthly opportunity where General McCurry can get all of the cores up on the net and talk about innovation topics. So they'll rotate who's briefing on what, things that are happening out at 4th ID or at the 101st or 1st Cav Division. We share those things laterally, and then we go out and figure out, okay, how do we now capitalize on those best practices? There are other forums that are maybe more informal in terms of brigade commander hot loops, where they're getting on the net every month to talk about their CTC experiences, to talk about what's the best quadcopter, how they're using the ISV or the ISV heavy. So that's happening on a regular basis. There's the Chief of Staff of the Army's the Harding Project Line of Departure, which is aggregating all of the Army publications and everything that's being written by all these junior officers, NCOs, and even senior officers and non-commissioned officers that are publishing their lessons learned on different topics. So it's all searchable now into one database, as well as what CAC is doing right now with Project Victor, which is supposed to aggregate all of these things and make everything searchable with a bot to really improve our ability to share laterally and kind of to disseminate those best practices across formations quickly, so that we're not waiting for a semi-annual publication to come out to help us figure out the next best thing in order to increase our warfighting and improve our lethality.
General, that's fantastic. I gave you a whole bunch of topics, and you've been ticking them off one by one. Let's go back to the drones and maybe the ISV as well, and let's talk a little bit more broadly about how the various initiatives by the Army and the Pentagon itself, OSD itself, to speed up the loop between acquisition corps and industry and operators in the field like you and your division. You mentioned really briefly that the Defense Innovation Unit was out there watching you guys taking on board stuff going on. What do these various initiatives to increase the speed of acquisition look like from a division commander's seat?
First of all, we're thrilled about the emphasis on speeding the acquisition cycle and getting the right kit into the hands of the warfighter as quickly as possible. So ripping the things from the headlines and making sure that we're equipping our United States Army with the best equipment that industry can provide. And that's that mindset that I see from the secretariat level all the way down through the HQDA staff, and then being implemented with the senior leaders in the Army Modernization Enterprise. So we benefit from that. So they're doing the work to fight bureaucracy at their level. And a lot of the acquisition authorities and the RDT&E dollars that exist above my division. I don't have RDT&E, but what I do have is I have soldiers that can provide unfiltered feedback to the Army. I have soldiers that can identify friction and capability gaps as the end users, as the people closest to the problem. And so if there's a question about a capability that the Army wants to test out, then we are willing and open to test that. And we're open to industry. We're open to whoever wants to help enable us and make us more lethal. And our contract and our promise back is that we will provide that feedback. And so you can, whether you're somebody from industry trying to make a better widget, or you're the Army trying to make a more informed acquisition decision. And so we do that through training, like I mentioned in the beginning. That is our laboratory. It's a living laboratory. The only better laboratory than our training labs in the Arctic is actual combat, because that's where I've seen capabilities accelerate the fastest. You've seen it in CENTCOM in terms of how they've been able to evolve their capability for data-centric warfighting as they've been in close contact. 20 years at GWAT, the same. It just that sense of urgency is an accelerant to anything that we're doing in industry when people's lives are on the line. We have one of the mechanisms we have to provide that feedback is our innovation partnerships that we have with DevCom, Army Research Laboratories, the Catalyst Pathfinder program, which although we are not officially participating in that program right now, we think we're going to be. There's work being done right now and agreements to find additional funding to help us stand up our own dirt lab. So our innovation labs here, we're going to have one at JBER, one up north. So kind of like you've seen at EagleWorks, you've seen at the 82nd with the Airborne Innovation Lab. You've seen down at 3rd ID with the Marne Innovation Lab. So it's our intent to replicate that, have one at JBER, have one at up at Fort Wainwright, where it's kind of we actually have 4 walls where soldiers can congregate. We can put out innovation objectives. They can provide feedback. They can prototype. They can meet with engineers. They can meet with university partners, which is an important piece of that innovation partnership. Is that you've got industry, you've got the military, and you've got academia all coming together around problems. And then the Army has stood up the Pathways Innovation and Technology Council, PIT, which is a way to kind of focus the effort across the Army to make sure that we're not all out chasing different innovation topics or ideas, but that we're doing, at least not to take away initiative, but to focus based off our biggest capability gaps and our innovation priorities to make sure we're not only experimenting along those lines of effort, but also providing that feedback in some sort of coherent manner so that it informs and de-risk modernization and acquisition decisions.
General, let's go back just a little bit to what you were talking about when you mentioned the work that you did at CENTCOM to move from sort of a PowerPoint-based briefing process to a more real-time situation where you have a system that ingests data and displays things on dashboards and move more flexibly like that. Tell us a little bit more about what that system was and how it's being used today.
Sure. So when I was at CENTCOM a couple of years ago, I was a deputy J3. I was working for General Kurilla, who was the former 18th Airborne Corps commander. And so when he was back at Fort Bragg, I was his chief of staff. And this is about the time when the Corps started doing the Scarlet Dragon exercises, which you're probably familiar with since we talked about Digital Falcon Oasis. The CENTCOM exercise was an evolution of the Scarlet Dragon exercise series, which was really the first time that an Army Corps attempted to do a complete completely digital kill chain. So using AI and computer vision to be able to detect targets, and then being able to build out those targets and nominate those targets into some sort of target workbench using the Maven Smart system, and then work those targets through the targeting process, which has always been a very kind of deliberate PowerPoint-based process. Now putting it all into a digital dashboard where everyone from the firing unit to the higher headquarters up to the Secretary of Defense or the President could see on a live dashboard using live data, be able to nominate, approve, prosecute, and then conduct battle damage assessment using all this live data, and be able to maintain custody of that target throughout the process. And then the intent here was obviously to improve the unit's lethality, but to be able to scope or to be able to target at scale, understanding that at the time when we were doing this, the threat was, as we have seen play out, the Iranian ballistic missiles, and just the sheer number that they had. And so the goal was we need to be able to prosecute 1,000. It was 1,000 targets a day is what is the mark that he put on the wall. So the CENTCOM, as it was transforming itself, had to use the 18th Airborne Corps lessons learned. So that first Scarlet Dragon Oasis, Digital Falcon Oasis, was the CENTCOM version of Scarlet Dragon. And so they just sat themselves on top of the 18th Airborne Corps as a higher headquarters. That was a forcing function to get the staff proficient in the Maven Smart System tools. So in order to be a higher headquarters, you have to understand how to log on to the system, how to operate, how to approve or disapprove targeting. And then that started to evolve now, and that started with only the AFCENT, so that the air component that runs the CAOC in the Middle East was doing dynamic and deliberate targeting. That eventually grew to all the components, so the maritime component, the land component, the air component, everybody participating in these larger exercises, which actually ended up growing to becoming cross-COCOM level exercises as part of the global information dominance experiment that the department's CDAO was running, the Chief Data and AI Office. So that was allowed us to look cross-COCOM and balance threats that could be transiting across COCOM boundaries. So all that evolution, I think, has led us to where we are now, where the Maven Smart System is the tool of choice for the warfighting combatant command headquarters, that they're able to track and balance risk across the globe and able to prosecute targets on the scale that you've seen in Operation Epic Fury right now, where the last time I counted, they'd prosecuted over 20,000, and that was a couple of days ago. So we're probably almost double that right now. And if they're not, it's because they're running out of targets. But just having the ability to sense and to prioritize based off a commander's targeting guidance, and then be able to find optimal firing solutions based off assets available, ammunition available, target location, different things. They're doing some really phenomenal stuff. And so I'm still in touch with a lot of the officers and NCOs from that Joint Fires Element at CENTCOM. In fact, we're doing a VTC with them today just to share best practices, those lessons learned from the battlefield. How does that inform what we're doing here in Alaska? So we have recently stood up what's called the Angel Strike exercise series. We're on our third iteration coming up, and it's the exact same thing. It is a tool that we're using, and we did Angel Strike 2.0 during our JPMRC rotation, but using soldiers in the field, Air Force aircraft in the skies, our Army long-range shooters, whatever's available, any joint fires capability that's available to use the broad area surveillance targeting, to sense targets, use computer vision, prioritize, and be able to pass targets digitally to complete a kill chain, and to see how fast we can do it and how many targets we can generate in any given day or per hour. And so we started off with like Angel Strike 1.0, 5 targets a day, and we were patting ourselves on the back because it was the first time we'd ever done that digitally. JPMRC, we were able to actually use a tool to pull live data from the battlefield in Ukraine, superimpose that on top of our battlefield framework that we had built here in Alaska, sort through 15,000 different detects. Of that, validate 500 of those as targets that were in line with our HPTL, and then prosecute 75 to 100 per day. Actually, using our target workbench to close the targeting loop. That's 2.0. 3.0, we hope to double that, maybe 5x it, in order to reach the numbers that we've seen in open source, where in Europe they say it may be 1,500 a day is the number that we need to be able to prosecute as a joint force. And so by talking to the folks that are doing this on a daily and a nightly basis, they're in the JOC at CENTCOM, we're able to take some of those best practices. What are some of those AI tools that they're using to speed things up and to be able to kind of not only increase the scope and scale, but also maintain that same level of targeting quality that they are, and that very high standard that they hold themselves to when generating targets and in executing targets. And then more importantly, closing that feedback loop and understanding what are the best tools for battle damage assessment to make sure that we're not reattacking targets that have already been destroyed, or we're not moving on from a target that hasn't been sufficiently destroyed. So how do you use AI, machine learning, computer vision, et cetera, or just a fusing of all these different forms of intelligence to be able to make that decision of attack, reattack, or move on.
Right. So one of the biggest topics around AI is the issue of trust. How do you learn to trust the tools? How far do you trust the tools? What does that look like in your experience?
Well, first and foremost, we have always and will continue to keep humans in the loop. We trust our analysts; they're trained. But what we do is we empower them, and we pair them with an AI tool that allows them to do work faster and allows fewer analysts to produce higher number of potential targets. And so what we have to do is constantly verify the efficacy and the performance of a particular algorithm that's generating possible target nominations for us. And we do that where an algorithm can nominate a target, and we have an analyst say yes or no, that is a destroyed tank, or no, that is not a tank, that's a school bus, or and be that human. And so each time you go back and say yes or no, the algorithm got it right, it makes that algorithm smarter and it trains it. But what's more important is the ability to ingest data from not only our training exercises and to memorialize that data, because now that we've got these Foundry-based objects that are searchable, that we can put into a cloud, put in and maintain forever, we can search these things and go back and then feed that into future either simulations or just feed that as feedback that we can provide to make our algorithms more performant. And then so if you take just not only the 11th Airborne Division, but across the Army, across the Joint Force, and then from what we're getting from the combatant commands, we can really start to perfect the performance of those algorithms, and then start to minimize the risk associated with using any of these tools. Although it'll never be a perfect system, but we can use big data to make it a much more precise tool in the future.
All right. Well, General, I think that's about as much as we have time to talk about today. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I've learned a lot about how the division learns and how it goes about distributing that knowledge, about how you're working with a whole new set of circumstances that make you more agile. The next generation of C2 with AI and ML and all that stuff. I can't thank you enough, General.
Yeah, thanks for your time. I appreciate it, Brad.
All right.
Great talking to you.
Yes, you too. All right, everybody, stay tuned. We've got more coming. This is Brad Peniston with Defense One.